The lights in the woods. 1. The cabin that wasn't on the map. Logan had always loved hiking. There was something peaceful about getting lost in nature, miles away from people, work, and the noise of the city. But this trip wasn't about peace, it was about escaping. His breakup with Claire had left him empty, and when his friend Owen suggested a weekend camping trip in Black Hollow Forest, Logan agreed without hesitation. Black Hollow was dense, isolated, and known for its eerie stillness at night. As they set up their tents near a lake, Owen pulled out his phone and checked the map. "This is weird," he muttered. Logan looked over. There was a structure marked deep in the woods. A cabin. But when they had planned the trip, there had been no mention of a cabin on any of the park's official maps. "Think someone lives out here?" Logan asked. Owen shook his head. "No roads lead to it. Doesn't make sense." A chill crawled up Logan's spine, and then from the tree line they saw the first light, a small glowing orb hovering between the trees. It flickered once, then vanished. Owen laughed uneasily. "Just fireflies, right?" Logan nodded, but deep down he wasn't so sure. 2. The whispering in the trees. That night, Logan woke up to voices, soft, distant. At first he thought it was Owen talking in his sleep. Then he realized the whispers were coming from the woods. Logan sat up, peering through the mesh of his tent. A few yards away, Owen was standing outside, staring at the forest. "Owen?" Logan whispered. Owen didn't move. Logan crawled out of the tent, shivering in the cold air. "Dude, what are you doing?" Owen slowly turned. His face was pale, eyes unfocused. "They want us to follow." Logan's stomach nodded. "What?" Owen pointed. The lights were back. More of them, floating deeper into the forest, moving in a line, like they were leading somewhere. "Come on," Owen whispered. Then, without waiting, he started walking, right toward the lights. 3. That shouldn't exist. "Owen, stop," Logan hissed, chasing after him. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. No wind, no insects, just the faint crackle of the lights as they flickered ahead. Logan grabbed Owen's arm. "Dude, wake up!" Owen blinked, suddenly confused. "Why are we out here?" he whispered. Logan's blood ran cold. "You walked out here," Logan said. "You were following the lights." Owen swallowed hard. "I don't remember." Then they heard it. Creak. Both of them froze. A head barely visible in the dim glow. A cabin. Its roof sagged, walls covered in moss, but the windows were intact, and the front door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. Owen exhaled. "It's real." Logan stared at it, heart hammering. Then, from inside the cabin, a single candle flickered to life. 4. The cabin that remembers. "We should go," Logan whispered, but Owen stepped forward. "Owen, don't." Too late. Owen walked up the rickety steps and into the cabin. Logan cursed under his breath, then followed. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of rotting wood and something else. Something familiar. Ash. The candle sat in the middle of a wooden table, its flame flickering unnaturally. Owen ran his fingers along the wall. "Look at this." Logan turned and felt his stomach drop. Names. Hundreds of them, carved into the wood. Some were faded, others deeply etched, like the writer had been desperate to be remembered. Then Logan saw a name he recognized. Claire Bennett, his ex-girlfriend, his very recently missing ex-girlfriend. His hands shook. "Owen?" Then the candle went out, and everything went black. 5. The man in the dark. The air shifted. It was wrong. Heavy, pressing. Owen grabbed Logan's arm. "We need to get out of here." Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from inside the cabin. A voice murmured from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come." Logan spun toward the door, but it was gone. The walls were changing, twisting. Like the cabin was alive. The footsteps grew closer. Owen screamed. Logan turned just in time to see something pull him into the shadows. 6. The face in the flames. Logan ran. He didn't know how, didn't know where, but suddenly the door was there again. He burst out of the cabin, lungs burning. Behind him, the entire cabin caught fire. Flames erupted from the walls, racing across the roof, but there was no heat, no smoke, just light. And in the center of the fire, Logan saw a face, a woman. Her skin was charred, her eyes filled with rage. Then she whispered his name. Logan. His blood turned to ice. He stumbled back, heart hammering. The fire flickered, then vanished. The cabin stood untouched, as if nothing had ever happened. But Owen was gone. 7. The names on the wall. The next morning, Logan called the police. They searched for hours. No sign of Owen. No tracks, no proof the cabin had even existed. But Logan knew what he had seen. A few days later, he checked the missing persons database, and there, buried in a long list of names, was Owen Carter. A new entry. His friend was gone. But the worst part, when Logan drove back to the campsite a week later, the cabin was there again. And this time, there was a new name carved into the wood, Owen Carter. And below it, his own name, Logan Gray, waiting for him to return. The Man in the Attic 1. A house that never felt right. Chris and Megan had no choice but to move into the old house. They were broke, struggling after Megan lost her job. The house, a 2-story colonial on the edge of town, was the only place they could afford. The landlord was too eager to rent it out. "It's been vacant for a while," he admitted, shuffling his feet. Chris glanced up at the towering house. It looked normal enough. "So why did the last tenants leave?" Megan asked. The landlord hesitated. "Then they moved out unexpectedly." Chris and Megan exchanged a look, but they signed the lease anyway. They had no idea what they had just stepped into. 2. The first night. The house was cold. Not just temperature-wise, cold in a way that made the skin prickle, the air feel thick. That first night, Chris woke up to a noise, a faint thudding sound, like something moving upstairs. He sat up, listening. The attic. Chris sighed. Probably just the house settling. He rolled over and went back to sleep. But the thudding never stopped. 3. The attic door. By the third day, Megan noticed something strange. The attic door, which had been closed when they moved in, was slightly open now. Chris frowned. "Did you go up there?" Megan shook her head. "I don't even like looking at it." Chris walked to the hallway and shut it firmly. That night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., Chris woke up again. The noise was louder now. A slow, deliberate scraping, then a creak, a sound he couldn't ignore anymore. The attic door had swung open again. Chris's blood ran cold. 4. The figure in the shadows. Chris tried to tell himself it was the wind, or maybe the latch was loose. But Megan was convinced otherwise. She kept glancing at the attic door, rubbing her arms like she was cold. "I don't like it," she murmured. "It feels like we're being watched." Chris wanted to tell her she was being paranoid. Until that night, when he saw the shadow. It was just after midnight. Chris got up to get water. As he passed the attic door, something made him stop. Movement. Just a flicker, barely visible in the dim hallway light. But he saw it. A figure. Standing at the top of the attic stairs, watching him. Chris's breath hitched. He reached for the light switch, and when he flicked it on, the figure was gone. 5. The footsteps on the ceiling. Megan refused to sleep that night. She curled up in bed, clutching the blankets, whispering, "Chris, what did you see?" Chris exhaled. "I don't know," but he did know. Something was up there, and it wasn't just his imagination. At 3:12 a.m., it started again. Thud, thud, a slow, heavy dragging sound, coming from the attic. Chris and Megan lay in bed, paralyzed. Then a new sound, a soft, muffled laugh. Chris bolted upright. Megan squeezed his arm. "Did you hear that?" Chris's stomach nodded. He grabbed his phone flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The attic door was wide open. A single footprint, dark, wet, stained the wooden floor. And then from the darkness above, a whisper. "Chris." 6. The man who lived in the attic. The next morning, Megan demanded answers. Chris called the landlord. The man hesitated. Then he sighed. "You weren't supposed to stay this long." Chris's blood turned to ice. "What the hell does that mean?" The landlord's voice was strained. "The house has a history." Chris gripped the phone. "What kind of history?" The man exhaled shakily. "In 1972, a man disappeared into the attic. The owners searched for days, never found a body." Megan clutched Chris's arm. "That's not possible." But the landlord continued. "Every tenant since then has reported the same thing. The footsteps, the door opening on its own, and at 3:12 a.m., they see him." Chris's mouth went dry. "See who?" The man on the other end paused, then whispered, "The man in the attic." 7. The final night. That was it. Chris and Megan packed their bags. "We're leaving," Megan said, "tonight." Chris didn't argue, but the house had other plans. At exactly 3:12 a.m., Megan woke up screaming. Chris jumped up, but she wasn't in bed. She was standing in the hallway, facing the attic. Her hand was on the doorknob. Chris's stomach dropped. "Megan," he whispered, "come back to bed." She didn't move. Then, in a flat, lifeless voice, she said, "He wants me to open it." Chris lunged forward. Just as the attic door swung open on its own, a rush of freezing air blasted through the hallway, and standing at the top of the attic stairs was him. Tall, thin, eyes too wide, a smile that stretched too far. His voice wasn't human when he whispered, "You should have left sooner." Then, the lights exploded. Chris grabbed Megan and ran. 8. The house always calls them back. They never went back. The next morning, Chris called the landlord. "We're gone," he said. "We're not coming back." The landlord sighed. "No one ever does." Chris hesitated. "Then why rent it out?" A long pause. "Then, because the house always calls them back." Chris hung up. They moved to a new apartment across town. But even now, Megan wakes up at 3:12 a.m. She stands by the door, and sometimes Chris hears her talking to someone in her sleep. When he asks who, she only whispers, "He's still waiting." And far across town, at the house on Elder Lane, the attic door slowly creaks open again, waiting for the next family. The room that doesn't exist. The move to apartment 405, Noah and his wife, Emily, had been looking for an affordable place for months when they found Ridgeway Towers. A high-rise apartment building in the heart of the city, Ridgeway was old but well-maintained. The landlord, Mr. Thompson, showed them apartment 405. "It's been vacant for a while," he admitted, unlocking the door. "But it's in great shape." The unit was perfect. Spacious, cheap rent, a beautiful view of the skyline. Emily was sold immediately. As they signed the lease, Noah casually asked, "Who lived here before us?" Mr. Thompson hesitated, then he smiled. "Oh, no one you'd know." Noah thought nothing of it at the time. He should have. 2. The locked door. The first few weeks were fine. Then Noah noticed the door. At the end of the hallway, past the bedroom, was a small wooden door, painted white, slightly faded. Noah tried the knob. Locked. "Hey, did you notice this?" he asked Emily. She glanced at it, shrugging. "Probably a maintenance closet." Noah frowned. "But why would it be inside the apartment?" Emily smirked. "You gonna lose sleep over a closet?" Noah let it go. But something about it bothered him, and later that night, he could have sworn he heard something moving inside it. Of 3, the whispering behind the door. It started subtly. At night, Noah would wake up to faint whispers, low, murmuring, coming from the locked door. At first, he thought he was dreaming, until one night when Emily shook him awake. "Noah," she whispered, "do you hear that?" Noah held his breath. The whispering was louder now. Not words, just a soft, urgent murmuring. Emily clutched his arm. "It's coming from behind the door." Noah got up, grabbed a kitchen knife, and walked toward the hallway. The whispering stopped. Noah stood in front of the door. Silence. But then, tap, tap, tap. Something knocked from the other side. Noah stepped back. Emily screamed. The door had unlocked itself, and it was slowly swinging open. Before, the room that shouldn't exist inside, there was a room. Not a closet, not a storage space. A full-sized room with peeling wallpaper, a single window, and a chair in the center. Emily clutched Noah's arm. This room, it wasn't in the apartment layout. Noah stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, as if no one had breathed it for years. A musty smell filled his lungs, like something rotting. Then he saw the writing on the walls. Hundreds of names scratched into the paint. Some were old, faded. Others looked fresh. At the very bottom, near the floor, was a name that made Noah's stomach drop. Emily Carter, his wife's name. Emily gasped. "Noah, what the hell?" Noah turned, heart hammering. The door slammed shut behind them, and the whispering returned. But now they could understand the words. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Noah grabbed the knob, locked. Emily banged on the walls. "Let us out!" The whispering grew louder. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. 5. The woman in the room. She was tall, thin, her face obscured by long, tangled hair. Her skin was gray, as if she had been left in the dark for too long. Emily stumbled back. Who are you? The woman tilted her head. Then she stepped closer. Noah grabbed Emily and kicked the door. Nothing. The woman's breathing grew heavier. Then she whispered in Emily's voice, "You shouldn't have come here." Emily screamed. Noah slammed his shoulder into the door. The wood splintered, and suddenly they were back in the hallway. The room was gone. Just a blank wall where the door had been, as if it had never existed. 6. The landlord's secret. The next morning they packed their bags. Noah stormed into the landlord's office. "What the hell is in that apartment?" he demanded. Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. "You saw the room, didn't you?" Noah's chest tightened. "You knew?" The landlord exhaled. "I try to keep people from opening it." Emily trembled. "What is that place?" The old man hesitated. "Then, a long time ago, this building wasn't apartments, it was a boarding house. One of the women, a tenant, disappeared. No record of her ever leaving. No body, just gone." Noah's stomach churned. "And you think she's still in there?" Mr. Thompson's expression darkened. "I don't think she ever left." Verse 7. The final warning. Noah and Emily moved out that day. But the nightmares never stopped. Some nights, Emily woke up standing in the hallway, facing the wall where the door had been. She would whisper half asleep, "It's open again." And sometimes, Noah wakes up alone, the bed cold beside him, and in the dark hallway, a faint whisper, "You shouldn't have come here." Then just for a second, the door reappears, waiting.